I'm going to demonstrate how to solve this problem correctly. A teacher was analyzing the relationship between students that received high scores on tests and students that are involved in at least one extracurricular activity at school. The teacher surveyed all of their students. For the students, 80% received high scores on tests, 60% were involved in at least one extracurricular activity, and 40% received high scores on tests and were involved in at least one extracurricular activity. Define events T as a student that received high scores on tests, and E represents a student that is involved in at least one extracurricular activity. Now we're going to do part A, make a two-way table to represent the sample size for this chance process. So this is what our table is going to look like. Now, since T represents the test scores, we're going to write scores, and E represents the activities. This E represents students involved in an extracurricular activity, while this one represents students not involved in an extracurricular activity. This T represents students who scored high, and this T represents students who did not score high. Now, based on our table, we're going to fill in what we know. Since 80% received high scores on tests, we're going to do 0.80. Now, since 60% were involved in at least one extracurricular activity, we're going to do 0.60. Now, to get to these numbers, we're going to see that 40% received high scores on tests and were involved in at least one extracurricular activity. So that means these two. We're going to do 0.40. And 0.60 minus 0.40 is going to be 0.20. And then we can fill in the rest. We have 0.40, and then we're going to see that we want to equal 1 over here. So we're going to do 0.40, we're going to do 0.20, and then we're going to leave 0 here. And here is our two-way table. Now we're going to do part C. What is the probability that a student receives high scores on tests and is not involved in at least one extracurricular activity? So we're going to write this as the probability of T and the probability of E happening. So we're going to look up and we're going to find T and E. We get 0.40. And that's how you calculate it. Now we're going to do part C. Are the events T and E independent? To check if they're independent, we have to see if they're equal. So we are going to do probability of T to the probability of T and E. Then we're going to look up at our table. We're going to see this would be 0.80 and 0.40. And these two numbers are not equal. Not equal. So they are not independent. Finally, we're going to do part D. What is the probability that a student is involved in at least one extracurricular activity, given we know that the student receives high scores on tests? So we're going to write that as and to find the probability of E happening given we have T, we're going to see E, we're going to do 40. It's 40 over 80. So we will do 0.4 over 0.80. And the probability of this happening is 0.5. Thank you. I hope this video helped.